Usually, if you stay true to yourself and you're doing what you believe is the right thing, it's going to work out. Maybe not the way you thought it would, but it's going to work out.
Yes.
And people are going to appreciate, maybe not right now, but they're going to appreciate what you did for them.
Well, welcome to the interview, Coach. I can't thank you enough for taking your time. I've been waiting for this for a while, and just thank you.
No, my pleasure. You're welcome, Matt. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's fun that, you and I had the opportunity to speak with your team. Oh my gosh, this is probably 4 years ago at this point, and got to meet you then and see you every once in a while at the hockey rink, as my son now plays against you guys at Valor Christian. So it's really fun, though, for me to dive in and just get to pick your brain a little bit over the next, 30 to 45 minutes. And, when I look back at your history, right, as a player, as a coach, you've experienced hockey as a player and a coach at a variety of different levels, right? And as you look back, and this one will make you think a little bit, but what's one of your favorite memories you have as a coach? Does one or two stick out to you that just like big memorable moments?
Yeah, one does. And it's probably going to be a little bit of a, I don't want to say a surprise, but my very first head coaching position at the Division I level was at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. And at the time I took the position, Miami was a fairly young program, about 10 or 15 years. And they had always struggled in the old CCHA. At the time in the CCHA, Miami would play against member schools like Michigan State and Michigan and Ohio State and, schools that were much bigger, much more higher profile because of their football and basketball programs. And at the time, Miami was the farthest southern hockey school in the country.
Wow.
And so not that meant a lot, but, when most of the players that we were recruiting were coming from Ontario, and to be able to play at Miami, you had to kind of pass by all those schools in Michigan and Ohio to get to Oxford, Ohio to play at Miami. So there was some challenges just from a geographical standpoint. The facility was a small little community rink with seating only on one side, 1,500 max.
Yes.
And so it wasn't even when you packed the building, there wasn't a lot of revenue being generated for the program. In addition to that, the program only benefited from having one full-time assistant coach rather than two or three or four.
Yes.
The head coach had to teach in the physical education department. And we didn't have the full allotment of scholarships. Everybody else had 18 in the conference, and we had 12.
Wow.
So, there were a number of things that we were facing as challenges when I first got there in '89. And it was the first couple of years were really difficult, very difficult. I came in feeling pretty confident that I could turn things around right away. I came in as an assistant coach at Michigan State, where all we would do every year was just basically reload with the top players across North America. And here we go again. We're challenging for a national title.
Yes.
So I thought I had all the answers, and I take over the position at Miami, and it was a lot different. And, really tested my perseverance, my patience, you name it, a lot of questions. And especially after our second year there, we'd just finished our second year, and we'd won a total of 3 games throughout the entire season. We were 3-2 33 or 3-34, something like that for the season. So to answer your question, that's where we started, or I started with the program. And then the following year, we became, because we started bringing in, by that time, some of our recruiting classes were in place.
Yes.
And we started to become a little bit more competitive. But at the end of year 4, or towards the end of the season of year 4, we were in a race with Michigan for the CCHA regular season title, and went right down to the final weekend and the final game of the regular season.
Wow.
Michigan, we knew because of the game time that Michigan was playing, they had already won their game. So we had to get, and we were playing at Lake Superior State. They were a national power at the time. And they were a power in our league that year. So, and we had to somehow figure out a way to get at least 1 point to win the league title. And I remember late in the game, we're down by a goal. We tied up with about a minute to go in regulation. We go into overtime, and Lake Superior seemed like they had the puck the entire overtime, but they couldn't score. And so we got the point. We win the regular season title because of that point. And I just remember the feeling of pride and accomplishment and relief and satisfaction and all those things that so many naysayers, including myself, thinking that I don't know if we can ever get this done. And to be able to not only win the league title, but win it against a national powerhouse like Michigan,
Yes.
kind of really gave us an understanding of what we could accomplish if we really, truly believed in each other and brought in the right type of people, the right kind of characters. And
Yes.
so, since then, before then and afterwards, we've been involved in championships, league championships, and some national titles. But that night that we won it all up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, against a really good Lakers hockey team, and to win the regular season title, I'll never forget that. That's my one, probably my fondest memory as a hockey coach.
That's amazing. When I love that, and I want to dig into this a little bit because I imagine that building of a team and getting that level has shaped how you coach, right? Your philosophy and how you set expectations and hold them and all those sorts of things. But when you look back at, even going from year 3 to year 4, right? You talked about bringing in different recruiting classes, things of that nature, that belief. What was it in your mind that allowed you to, over that couple year period, to go from just, not very good to, competing against Michigan? What was the secret from a coach perspective, but also player perspective? Like, what did you guys do?
The secret was, it's not really a secret, but we brought in the right players. I'll give you a little story because, we couldn't expect to recruit successfully against Michigan or Michigan State.
Right.
Or Lake Superior or Bowling Green. Those were the 4 powerhouses in our conference at the time. They were recruiting nationally. Anybody that they knocked on their doors, the door would open and please come in.
Yes.
Miami, people would be polite, but people just weren't interested in playing at Miami. They were a doormat of the league. So, we had to be really careful about not overextending ourselves and jumping into a pool that we didn't belong in. But we wanted to be able to make sure that if we couldn't recruit the very top end talent in the country, we were going to make up for that by recruiting not only kids who wanted to be with our, in our program, but had that inner makeup that
Yes.
they were going to, you knew they were going to do everything they could to be successful.
Yes.
We watched them, playing in junior hockey, and we did a lot of in-home meetings. And so those first couple of years, our very first recruiting class was made up of some of those players. And so by the time they were sophomores, year 3, you could start to see the team, first of all, the culture in the team, the atmosphere in the team, and how they cared for each other, how hard they worked, how hard they competed. That was starting to change.
Yes.
It was slow, but you could see it slowly changing. I think one of the things I remember vividly was after that 3-win season, my second year there. It was a Saturday night. We lost. Our season's over. On Monday afternoon, I get a call from our strength and conditioning coach. And he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I know that you had planned on giving your team 2 weeks off before we started training, but I had 6 of your guys knocking on my door at 6:30 this morning. They wanted to train because they never want to go through a season again like they did." Wow. And those 6 guys were, not only did they impress our strength and conditioning coach, but they were the ones who were the building blocks of that program and the turnaround of that program. They were a big, big part of it. And so I think in a lot of ways, we may not have been able to recruit the very best player, but I think for our program, they were the right players.
Right. Well, I love this conversation, Coach, because, it's how do you find as a coach those intangibles, like the drive that they just want to be great, and they could be the greatest player in the world and have that, which there are examples right now. I watched one on Saturday named Nathan McKinnon during the playoffs. And then there's others that have that potential and they have that drive, but they're not top tier yet.
Yep.
When you talk about looking for those intangibles, like you said, you watch, and I know that probably went through when you're recruiting at DU and then with the Lightning and now with not recruiting at Valor, but that's a whole different thing. But as you're recruiting players looking for those types, when you're watching a kid on the ice, what do you look for? How do you know that, or able to tell that kid has just that inner drive? Is there a way to tell, or is it just a sense? Or
well, I mean, I don't know if there's any specific thing that there was. We would always try to go to watch games that were going to be challenging games for the kids that we were interested in, and we would always position ourselves when we were watching the game. We'd always position ourselves somewhere in the arena so that we could watch what's happening on the ice, but also watch the bench. So when the players would come off the ice after a shift, myself and I would have our staff, when they were out watch what's happening on the bench. If there's a player A, if Matt Phillips is a young kid that we're really interested in, and we like the way he plays, pay special attention to what happens when Matt goes off the ice. What's he doing on the bench? Is he encouraging his teammates? You can't hear the discussions, but just by his body language, is he listening to what his coach is saying? Is he shaking his head? The body language can tell you so much about a person. Is he the kind of guy, and in hockey terms, they use this term, he's dragging his teammates into the fight, dragging his teammates into the battle. Nathan McKinnon used that. He's one of those guys. Yes. Brady Tkachuk. Again, these kind of guys who just have that fire burning in them. They love to compete. They want to compete at the top level. They want to be challenged. and and they're not going to accept anything other than your best effort. And being able to, there are nights, whether it's the NHL or whether it's college or high school, there are nights and afternoons and where you just don't feel, you don't have it. Whatever has happened, whether it's sleep deprivation or homework or issues with your families, your girlfriends, or whatever, you just don't seem to have it. And it's teammates who are willing to pull you into the battle, demand you get in the battle, are the ones that can be so helpful. And so we are fortunate to be able to, in analyzing these kids' characters, first of all, we had to watch them live.
Yes.
There wasn't much that we watched back in those days. There wasn't much internet video or anything like that. There was none. And so we had to, and then obviously through a lot of communication with coaches, parents,
yes,
teachers, people that knew them, but we had, obviously, if a coach from a program calls you because they want to know about the player that you coach, you want that player to move on. It's gonna look good for that kid. It's going to look good for your program. So you had to be really careful as recruiters about saying, okay, we got to ask the right questions. We got to ask the right people. So
yes.
There were people, I remember talking to a school janitor one time.
Really?
Because he had no axe to grind. And, I said, hey, do you know this kid Blasi, Enrico Blasi? He said, oh yeah, he's a hell of a kid. I love him. He's one of these kids who's always helping us pick up in the hallways. It happens, Enrico Blasi is now the head coach at St. Thomas University in St. Paul, one of the newest Division I programs in the country. And, came from Miami University, was one of our captains there and was a longtime head coach there. So, but I think just trying to make sure that you don't leave any rock unturned in checking on somebody's background.
Yes.
I love using Rico as an example because he was too small. He wasn't fast enough. Didn't shoot the puck hard enough. Go on and on and on. And we were so fortunate to be able to have him come to Miami because he was one of those 6 guys in that weight room that Monday morning that woke up the strength coach. And that was the very first day, if you will, that the program started to turn.
That's amazing.
And again, Rico was, he wanted desperately to go to Michigan State. Because that's where a lot of his teammates were going. And Michigan State at the time, it was a high profile hockey program. And we were very fortunate that, we were able to bring him in. And as things started to move forward and the momentum for our program, we're able to start expanding our recruiting grounds, if you will, and
yes,
at some point we started becoming competitive on the recruiting trail with Michigan and Michigan State, and so, but yeah, it was painstakingly slow. It was at times very frustrating, and I had to lean on my mentors quite a bit to say, okay, dang, are we doing this right? I'm doing everything I learned from you, but it worked when I was with you, but it's not working right now. And so, yeah, just being able to have those mentors say, hey, just be patient. You might want to tweak it here or here, but yeah, it was certainly to be able to analyze and develop understand the kind of characters. Sometimes you just got to go with a gut feel as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Well, so let's transition to DU, right? And I love these stories. So you spent 19 years at DU, right? Won 2 national championships.
I didn't want to come to DU.
You didn't?
No.
Give me the story there.
Well, it was the end of year season 5 for me and our staff at Miami. And by that time, we had it rolling.
Mm-hmm.
We were competitive in our league. We'd won a league title. We were ranked nationally. We had been to the national tournament. Recruiting, we were able to bring in still the right players, but a little bit more talented.
Yes.
A lot of things were going well. And my wife and I really enjoyed the small town of Oxford. Mm-hmm. And then DU calls. And, I knew Frank Serratori and his staff. We knew of Denver because of its long history of great tradition in hockey, but
yes,
they were really in need of a rebuilding. And Frank and his staff were slowly getting that done. But honestly, I was so entrenched emotionally,
yes,
with what we were doing at Miami, and I didn't want to start again. We had some really terrific young guys on our team, tremendous potential to not only help us get even better, but move on with their careers to the National Hockey League at some point. And I didn't really feel like I had the energy or the desire to go through that same process again at another school.
Yes.
And so I said, thank you, but no thank you. And that's when I got a second call from Dan Ritchie,
wow,
who was the new chancellor at the University of Denver.
Which, for those of you who don't know, University of Denver, that's like a very big name, like well-known name now. So just to give you perspective. So not just a chancellor, a legacy.
Dan saved the university. Dan saved the university. There's no question. Saved it. I mean, literally saved the university from closing its doors. But anyway, so Dan convinced me to visit. He said, hey, just come out for it. Colorado is beautiful at this time of year. I guess it was late April, early May. Beautiful, come out for the blue skies and bring your wife with you and just make a little 2 or 3 day vacation. And so, I thought to myself, well, if they're willing to, throw away, good money after bad, then why not? And so my wife said, sure, let's go out for a visit. And so, I mean, that's how it started. I mean, I came out and again, it was Dan Ritchie, because in those days, when you walked onto the DU campus, nothing would impress you. There were high schools. In fact, the high school that I coach at right now looked a lot better than what you saw on the DU campus.
Yes.
But it was Dan Ritchie's vision, which certainly came to fruition. But it was Dan Ritchie's vision and his ability to be able to sell that vision to people, including me, that helped me make my decision.
I love that side of it. And would you say that, to parallel this to being a hockey coach, is your job as a coach is one of the key components that you have to create a vision of where your team's going and how that boy or girl, like depending if you're coaching boys or girls, how that kid fits into the vision? Or is it different from a coach perspective?
No, I think it's the same. It's the very same. I mean, you have an idea as to, what you'd like to build or what you'd like to achieve.
Yes.
You gain an understanding, okay, how we're going to go about doing that. These are the steps. They're going to be these certain steps are going to be a lot more difficult than the other steps. But if we stay true to these steps and don't deviate, obviously make changes if changes are necessary. But eventually we'll get there.
Yes.
And, I think the benefit I had was going through those difficult times at Miami and at a small Division III school that I had been at, many years earlier at River Falls, Wisconsin.
Yes.
So I had gone through those experiences. I knew what it was all about. I knew, I felt I knew what it took to be successful.
Yes.
And maybe there are times where you can take shortcuts, but I just didn't feel that it was worth in the long run to take shortcuts, because at some point that structure it's a house of cards and just falls in on you.
Yes.
So, Dan was terrific and a great leader for the university back in those really challenging days of the economy, especially in this region of the U.S. was big in oil and gas, and oil and gas had just gone straight down into the tank. And so everything in the economy in Denver was somehow attached to oil and gas. And when that goes down, everything goes down, including everybody associated with it. So, it was
that's fascinating.
Again, a memorable visit that my wife and I had.
Yes.
Again, the last person, at least one of the last people we talked to before we returned back to Oxford, Ohio, was Dan Ritchie. And that was probably the most important conversation that I've had with anybody in my career.
Oh, well, I can imagine, right? Because what that conversation ultimately led to, 19 years, 2 national championships, one team inducted into Hall of Fame. Hall, and it's incredible, right? When you look at that run. Talk to me about, I think when I talk to a lot of coaches, that word culture is thrown around a lot. How do we create a winning culture or a positive culture, however you want to describe it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you view, how do you best establish a very strong culture? How do you maintain strong expectations based on the different type of kid that comes through, all that sort of stuff? You strike me as a person who's got a baseline set and saying, here's, when you walk in, this is what you're going to get. This is the expectation. And sometimes it's really hard to hold that. So how do you view setting the expectation first and then holding it?
And that, you're right. That's really difficult. Hourly, daily. And this is how we do things here. We don't do those things here. This is how we do things here. And to be able to stay on track and not get distracted by other things.
Yep.
And to be able to hold people, players, staff, coaches, everybody around you accountable and understanding of what is expected is hard and draining, because you're trying to watch over everything and make sure that everybody is echoing what you want to do and trying to push the right buttons so people know that they're capable of more, that they can do this, and that if they do this, the results will be good.
Yes.
And realizing that, hey, I know the result. You won't see great results 2 or 3 days from now. You might see great results 2 or 3 weeks, but probably more or less 2 or 3 months from now.
Yes.
And for some, that's difficult.
Yep.
But that's what following that same process from day to day is so important in being able to develop that kind of culture that is going to allow you to have success. Yes. consistently from week to week, from month to month.
Yes. Well, and what advice would you give coaches who maybe they've established a standard, right? I think first step is establish the standard first of all, right?
Yep.
Get clear on that. But then they're dealing with pressure of, different levels is different things, right? But at the NHL, it's deal with pressure of like contracts renewing and all sorts of stuff, right? Fans at the college level, it's, am I getting to the next level, and just fans again. And then you get into high school level, it's parents, it's administration, it's coming from like all angles. And that's where it could be really challenging to like hold the standard, right? Hold the line. What advice would you give coaches who maybe are, I don't know, feeling like they're wavering a little bit, or feel like they should give in, but they know they shouldn't give in, to maintain the kind of integrity of the program, or their vision at least? What advice would you give them?
That's hard. It's really hard. Holding yourself accountable and others accountable at times can be so difficult. You know, a story that comes to mind, but usually if you stay true to yourself and you're doing what you believe is the right thing, it's going to work out. Maybe not the way you thought it would, but it's going to work out.
Yes.
And people are going to appreciate, maybe not right now, but they're going to appreciate what you did for them.
Yes.
You know, story that just popped in my mind. We're on the eve of our first national championship game at DU. We know we're playing the University of Maine the next night. Game's in Boston. This is 2004. And I learned that one of our players, our second leading scorer on our team, broke a rule. And I mean, it's not like he broke a rule of, okay, he slept in at a meeting, and it's a pretty substantial thing, and understanding that during the regular season, this player would be suspended for the next game. But our next game is the national championship game.
Yes.
He's our second leading scorer. Talented player. And I remember having that discussion with not only our coaching staff, but our university administration. And probably the majority of them are saying, are you sure you want to go that way? Are you sure you want, is it that important that you maintain your, I don't want to say, they didn't say, are you sure that you want to maintain your integrity? Just, this is the first time that the university could win a national championship since 1969. 39 years since Armstrong walked on the moon type of thing. That's a long time. And I knew in my gut what I wanted to do, but it's scary. This is the first time that I'm the guy who's responsible for making a decision like that. I remember talking to our captains, and Ryan Caldwell probably said it best that year. Ryan Caldwell was our senior captain, and he was unshakable. You know, when I told him what had happened and what I was planning to do, he just looked at me, matter of fact, said, "Hey, coach, we've gone through some tougher times than this year. We'll be fine." And that was my reaction. Like, wow. Okay. You know, and we're going to go and we're going to tell the team right now. So we walked down to our team meal and informed the team, and the young man, Lucas Storad, did not play the next night. It was a heck of a game. It went, most exciting finish in championship games. The NCAA has always said it, 1-0 game with, a minute and a half to go. DU has to kill off. It has two guys in the penalty box, and Maine pulls their goaltender. So it's a 6-on-3 for the last 92 seconds. And
wow.
But we won the game, and that was all good. But the guys, all the players from that team knew that was the right thing to do, that I was going to make that decision. They had no doubt about it, that I was going to make that decision and hold them and their teammates accountable. And so there was no waiver. They didn't waver at all in their approach to, okay, Lukasz isn't with us now. What do we do? And I think that, certainly was a part of the culture of understanding and expectations and requirements that if you're part of this team, this is what you're going to, you're going to be held at a higher level. Believe me, that team that won the next night, 3 months earlier was almost buried at the bottom of the conference. And
wow,
there were a lot of characters on that team with a lot of character. And quite often we shot ourselves in the foot. But as we said back in those days, when it came time to sack up, they were all in. And no matter who it was that was in the lineup, they were going to be, they were there for each other. So, it can be really difficult at times to hold others accountable, especially when you think, okay, this is going to be this could impact this could impact that. But I just remember when our captain said what he did, and I'm going, okay, why am I so worried? I mean,
yes,
I thought I knew Ryan really well, but his response was like almost a breath of fresh air. It took a huge weight off my shoulders, and I think some people in our administration thought I was crazy, but it worked out.
Well, I think that's a great story, because that's the hardest thing to do in a leadership role is to decide like what the consequences or how we do things, but stay on people. And I think you're right. It can be exhausting. And I appreciate you sharing that too, because I think sometimes we look at certain coaches and we're like, oh, that just must be easy for them. Or maybe they're, use whatever, bad word you want to about that person, him or her, of like, maybe they're a jerk or something like that. And it's like, no, this is a decision that's for the best of the team. And once the players understand that, and the program. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, and
So
again,
good.
there are certain points in anyone's career where they remember certain things vividly. And, I told you about our CCHA championship at Lake Superior State that one night. And I vividly remember that night that we talked to our team the night before the championship game in 2004. So, yeah, sometimes you wonder if you didn't have to deal with some of those things, if you would have all that, if I would have this gray hair right now, my hair would probably look a lot more like yours. But
I'm getting there, Coach. So,
yeah, it's again, Ryan Caldwell was one of those guys where he wasn't heavily recruited, but he was the right guy for our program.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
The decision he made or how he responded in that pressure situation, I think maybe if I was his age and I was the captain of a team and the coach would have told me, hey, we're taking this kid out of the lineup for tomorrow night's championship game. I said, hey, coach, let's really think about this. I mean, we need him. We're not going to win without him. Can we suspend him for the first game of next season? I don't know if I would have been able to have that same backbone and the same confidence and the same, hey, we can get it done.
Yes.
Like Ryan had.
Yes. Yeah, that's amazing leadership from a young man at that point, right?
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
But he knew what he wanted. Last question, Coach. I want to be aware of your time. But as you're, I talk to a lot of athletes too who are looking, at their high school level, they want to get to the college level. College level, they want to get to the pro level. But let's talk for high school, the transition from high school to college. What advice would you give student athletes who are looking to make that jump? Like, what do they need to do? How do they need to show up? You've talked about a couple of those elements too, right? About how you show up on the bench, things like that. But what advice would you give those athletes looking to make that jump to the next level?
Somebody is always watching. and especially nowadays. I mean, again, I hate to sound like an old dinosaur, but there was a period where it was really difficult to be able to watch a player. There was no, I mean, we had VHS tapes on occasion, but there was no internet or any, like, there's no cameras, that people could take video of like you have today. Someone is always watching, whether it's live, whether it's on video, whether it's captured with your knowledge or not. And you really, I mean, going from high school to the collegiate level, college coaches are so aware of the importance of bringing in not only talent, but the right talent. Now, I will say that the transfer portal has been, in some ways, it's allowed coaches to make recruiting mistakes and get rid of their mistakes the way they think of it.
Yes.
But that's not a good way to. Someone's always watching. If you're a student athlete at the high school level, someone's always watching you and how you handle yourself, whether you're on the ice surface, in the locker room, going out to your car in the parking lot, how you're driving away, how you are. Again, there are athletes who will walk right past a bunch of garbage in the hallway. There are others who will stop and help the custodians pick it up and put it in the receptacle.
Yes.
Almost every inch of your life nowadays, people are watching. Yes. And to be able to make sure that you are, I guess, showcasing yourself as the kind of person that would be a good fit for a program, that coaches and teammates, future teammates, want that kind of person with them, because that's the way we do it here. That's the kind of guy that I want in my program, or that's the kind of person I'd like to be. That's the kind of person I aspire to be like. Those are things that you cannot go wrong if you're thinking that way as a high school student athlete with a goal of going to college.
What a fantastic way to end this. And Coach, I just can't thank you so much for your time. And maybe I'll stick around for a minute after I stop recording here. But honestly, this interview is going to impact a lot of people, and love the stories, love the standard that you set and that I get to see just because I happen to live here in Colorado and have met you a number of years ago. And it's fun for me to watch as a fan, as a coach myself, as a father of a high school hockey player, to watch you kind of act and hold that, set the bar and hold the bar to that standard. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for your time today.
Matt, it was my pleasure. Thank you.